Anthony Morgan is the co-host of Nature of Things, and he's our guest today. And we're going to talk about a documentary that's upcoming, and it's called But Seriously. It airs Thursday, January 18th, 9 o'clock on CBC and CBC Gem. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about Anthony. In addition to being a television host, he's an entrepreneur, a game designer, and a PhD researcher. And he spent the last 20 years working in multiple fields across science communication to try and show people the power of science and how it can transform human lives for the better. And Anthony, we say welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
It's good to have you here. Now, before we start talking about the episode of Nature of Things, could you tell me when you decided that you were going to immerse yourself in science?
Yeah, there's a specific day that I remember. I don't remember the exact date, but I remember exactly what was happening. I was working at the Ontario Science Centre. I'd been a host there for about 6 months. So one of the people who walks around in one of those white lab coats, kind of, blowing things up, setting things on fire, mic dropping science, so to speak. And the thing about working there after about 6 months is at that point you start to feel like, I feel like I've kind of seen everything in here. It takes more than a day to enjoy the Science Center, but certainly less than 6 months to physically see everything. And that's what I thought. And so I remember being in the room that we have. You know what a plasma ball is?
Yeah.
It's kind of like a snow globe with like electricity inside of it. You put your hand on it, the electricity goes to your hand. Those things are awesome. But I'd seen it a lot of times, and I was like, oh, okay, it was awesome. And standing next to it was one of my colleagues. You know, the colleague who's the kind of mischievous person who likes to kind of get into a little bit of trouble when the boss isn't around. Yeah. So it was that guy, and he had that look on his face like, I'm about to get into some trouble. Do you want to watch? And I was like, yeah, that sounds awesome. So he takes a set of keys out of his pocket. He puts it on top of the plasma ball. And then he takes a quarter out of his pocket and he touches it to the keys. And what I see is electricity leaping out of the ball between the keys and the quarter. And I cannot believe what I'm seeing. And then he takes a piece of paper out of his pocket and he puts it in the pathway of the electricity, and the thing catches fire. And you got it. My mind is just leaving my body at this point. Like, you have to understand, I'd seen this thing 1,000 times before, and I had never seen it like that.
Wow.
And I started to look around at all the other exhibits in the Science Center and everything else around me and wonder, what else am I missing? Like, if I understand a little bit of science, I can do amazing things in the world. And that was the day that I realized I feel like I've woken up, like in the Matrix. I've woken up, and now my job, my responsibility, my opportunity is to let as many other people in the world know, like, hey, this is something that's available to you too. This kind of wonder and awe and excitement, it can be yours.
Now, this moment in time, was that partly what spurred you to open your own business called Science Everywhere?
It is 100% what spurred me to do that. Yeah, I mean, so working at the Science Center, you get a lot of student groups coming into the Science Center, and my favorite ones to engage with were the ones that were like the grade 9 or 10 or 11 students that would come in and they would spend the whole day sitting in the cafeteria while they have a science center around them. But they're not there for the Science Center, right? They're there because they're like, well, it's a good way to get out of class. I don't have to do math. I don't have to do chemistry. I can just talk to my friends. And so those are the hardest ones to get to create that kind of, oh, wow, amazing kind of moment. But they're the most gratifying when you do. And so my goal was to find as many of those kind of people as I possibly could. And if you're looking for the sort of science non-choir, if you're looking for people who don't know that they love science yet, you're not going to find most of them in the Science Center, right? You're going to find them out in the world, on the streets. And so I started Science Everywhere as a vehicle to reach those people who don't know that they love Science Center, who wouldn't find themselves in the Science Center on a regular basis. And I started doing things like vacuum sealing myself to buildings in downtown Toronto.
Well done. Well done. Now, tell me, what was your reaction when you found out you were going to be a co-host of The Nature of Things?
Yeah, I was in disbelief, So the day that I found out, I was actually on a shoot for The Nature of Things because I was guest hosting an episode. And so I was in the car. We had some of the crew around me. There was the director and and the camera and sound people, they were sitting next to me. And I get an email from Sue, who is the executive director of the show, or the executive producer for the show. And she says, "Hey, Anthony, can we talk?" And my heart dropped because I was like, "Oh man, I love this job. I probably did something to screw it up. What did I do? I messed it up?" And she calls and she says, "Anthony, I'm happy to let you know that you're going to be one of the new co-hosts of the show." And I lose my mind. I start screaming. I'm like, "Oh my God, I can't believe it. Like, I'm so happy." And she's like, "Yeah, but listen, you can't tell anyone." And I looked around at the camera guy and the director and the sound guy, and I was like, "Oh yeah, that's no problem. I won't say a word." It
I'll bet
was
that was a magic moment.
it was easily one of the top 5 best days of my life. So it was really cool.
Now, in the upcoming episode, the documentary features what we'll call a rather awkward topic. It's called But Seriously. And as we said, it's going to air on the 18th of the month, 9 o'clock on CBC and CBC Gem. And it's described as the bottom line on bums. I don't think I've ever recalled a program being dedicated to bums before, not just
Mhm.
human bums, but other creatures too. What inspired this rather bold topic?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. The first thing that a lot of my friends assumed when they found out that we're doing an episode on butts was they said, "Oh well, okay, I guess Anthony gets to pick all the episodes," and and it's not exactly true. It's very much a collaborative effort. The show has been and remains a group of really talented people that get together to make these things. But the goal for us was really to help people get more comfortable talking about that part of our anatomy, because when we're not comfortable doing that, people can literally die of embarrassment, right? Like when you have a medical issue or a medical problem, people are really reluctant to go and talk to their doctor, let alone a family member or a friend about it. And when you let problems like that persist, they can become very serious. They can become deadly, in fact.
Mhm.
So that was a really important part of why we wanted to do this. But the other thing is, if you're going to do a whole episode on butts, there's no better or more surefire way to be mocked mercilessly on the internet than to do an episode about butts where you take yourself entirely seriously the whole time. It's a topic that people can't help but giggle about and laugh about because we've got these social taboos kind of erected around it. And we thought, well, let's lean into that a little bit. Let's start where people are and where we are. It makes us a little bit uncomfortable and giggly to talk about as well. And and for me, leaning into that is really important because to me, science is not just the profound, awesome, important stuff. It is all of those things, and I don't want to lose those things. But it can also be really, really fun. That's what I learned at the Science Center, that there is no gap between the word science and the word fun in my mind. And I want to help make that, I want to help bridge that gap for the general public as well.
Now, this show looks at our butts and the other butts of animals and insects, but it does it from a number of vantage points, and I think this makes
Mhm.
it an entertaining program in addition to being a serious program. There's a bit of fun, there's some art, and of course, there's the science. You must have enjoyed that.
It was such a delight to get to kind of touch on every part of why that, like why butts are important, the cultural aspects. So we're looking at art pieces and depictions of butts across time, across cultures, across history, and getting to do, a live painting and a live piece of art, and kind of dive into that part of myself and explore that kind of part of our anatomy was really, really interesting. But we also get to talk to, marine biologists and evolutionary biologists, and and talk about what a butt means across the animal kingdom and across our evolutionary history. There are some animals with one butt, some animals with no butt, some animals with 100 butts. And it was fascinating to get to see the range of different solutions evolution has come up with to this specific set of problems.
You did quite a bit of traveling to do the show as well.
Yeah, that's right. We got to go to Norway, where they let me, unwisely, they let me pilot a research vessel in the fjords of Norway. We managed somehow to avoid capsizing, and we were there because we were looking for a very a very particular kind of worm called a flatworm that could help us solve a mystery that I had no idea existed. And that mystery was, which one evolved first, the mouth or the anus? And, I never imagined that I would be saying the word anus as much as I have on television, let alone trying to solve a mystery about it. And and so we got to go and explore this mystery with a researcher by the name of Andreas Hedgenol, brilliant guy who is working hard to solve this mystery. And he helps demonstrate it with the use of a plastic bag and a really cool demo. He's a great guy. People are going
And
to
you
love
got
him.
to you got to wear some Wellingtons and you got to wear some hip waders as well.
That's right. That was a first for me. I got to put on some wellies. I've never tried that before, but it was that day I remember it was particularly cold. But you don't even notice because you're exploring these incredible environments. Like I'd never heard of a nudibranch. And to first find out about them and then to go and see them live, they're the most beautiful creatures. They look, if you could imagine the most beautiful kind of slug or snail or worm that you can like that you would find on an alien planet, that's what these were. Just these gorgeous colors, and they had the most fascinating butts. One of them had a butt sort of in between its lungs, which would be kind of, for you and I, the equivalent of having your butt between your mouth and your nose, which to us is a horrible idea, but they seem to be quite happy with things.
It
So
works out well for them.
yeah.
Well, looking at the entire show, Anthony, um, can you tell me what the most interesting butt you saw in the series?
This is tough. Don't make me pick a baby.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say I would have to say the one that surprised me most and the one I think I share most is um it's not the fanciest animal. You wouldn't imagine there's anything special about its butt, but it's a red painted turtle. And it was fascinating to me because I found out that this particular species of turtle, they hibernate across the winter, but they breathe air, but they hibernate beneath the surface of the water, and so they can be there for months. And my first question is, well, if they breathe air, how are they I couldn't go to sleep under the water. That seems like a bad idea to me. How are these creatures surviving under there when they have to breathe air? And the answer is that part of their anus, part of their intestinal, like their digestive system, has become adapted to be able to absorb oxygen through its butt. This turtle can breathe through its butt. I don't imagine too vividly, but I imagine that's kind of how Aquaman does it too. And so that idea to me was just the most mind-blowing adaptation I think I've ever seen.
Well, I must say that visit to Madawaska that you did, I
Mhm.
found that particularly interesting because I didn't realize that turtle poop was actually good for the environment, a real positive. And that moment kind of struck to me about how important biodiversity is
Mhm.
across the entire world. And something
Yeah.
as simple as that and how it all plays to make the world that we have and that we enjoy. I thought that was a great segment.
Yeah, no, it was really fascinating to me. We got to spend a lot of time chatting with there was Nadine Perrin, who was a conservation biologist from Science North, who brought our red-pented turtle out that way. There was Samantha Noganash, the lands manager, and Terry Jones, the conservation technician, and they kind of walked me through the wetlands and the marsh of Magneto. They were they were experts at navigating an environment like that. They made it look easy, but I promise you, when you get in the water with your chest waders like nipple high, to like you're trying to ask them all the questions that you've always wanted to know the answers to, but at the same time, the ground that you're walking on is not level at all. So you're
No.
constantly risking falling, and then suddenly your chest wader turning from something that protects you from water to something that collects water as rapidly as possible. But they opened my eyes to the importance of the biodiversity that we have there, to your point, because I had no idea that red painted turtle poop is like gold in wetlands. It really does a super effective job of collecting all these nutrients, almost like a nucleation site, and distributing it across the wetlands. And that's not something that's obvious unless you study these things for a while. And it's part of the reason that it's so crucial that we look after as much biodiversity as we can, because we really don't know where all of these connections are until we get the chance to explore it and study it closely. So
Well, no
it was
discussion,
just,
no discussion about the butt would be complete without a look at a colonoscopy procedure
mhm.
and a trip inside the rectum, and it was amazing. The doctor and his patient, they were wonderful, and
Yeah.
we learned some important stuff from that.
We really did. You know, I mean, when they first pitched the idea of going inside a person's anus, I, like most people, was a little bit squeamish as, ooh, do we really want to do that? Is it going to be okay? Wouldn't it be weird for me or for the patient or for the doctor? But we were so lucky to meet this incredible woman named Jing Wang. She was, well, the person who we ended up sitting in on her colonoscopy, and she was just so gracious and generous and warm and so willing, not even willing, excited to do this because she had a colonoscopy many years earlier that ended up saving her life. They discovered polyps that were cancerous, but because she did the colonoscopy early, they were able to treat her soon enough to prevent any serious long-term health consequences. And she's doing quite well now. And she really wanted to impress upon us, like, there's a reason it's important to do this. We need to let people know they need to go and see their doctor and get checked because over about the age of 50, the rate at which you discover polyps that potentially could be cancerous is about 30% of people. And fortunately, the rate, like, uh, the numbers are coming down for older populations, and it's probably because we're getting screening, but that trend is not the same for younger people. So for people my age in particular, I'm a millennial, I'm a mid-millennial, and it's really important that we start thinking about that kind of thing as well.
Mhm.
So it was, and the other thing I really want to make sure is clear, I didn't know this until we actually saw it happen, is just how quick and painless that procedure was. Jin Wang was not uncomfortable at all throughout the procedure. We talked to her before, we talked to her after, and I was blown away by how, like, run of the mill it was. It was very quick. She didn't seem to notice at all. It was amazing. So I really encourage people to go and get checked and see their
Well, your
doctor.
your follow-up conversation with Cassandra was it was great. She is such a positive person, um, and her experience certainly will be of interest to people.
Yeah, you know, this is something that didn't even actually end up making it into the doc, but we've encouraged her to write a book about her life experience because Um, she's a person who has no anus. That she's the first person I've met like that. She was diagnosed with colorectal cancer, and that meant that she wasn't able to keep her anus. But she was incredibly candid and honest and willing to share about that experience and how it genuinely transformed her life. So she obviously had the surgery. Now she has sort of a colostomy bag, like almost like a little spout that she uses to poop on the side of her stomach. But she took that experience and thought, I can turn lemons into lemonade. I can make something good out of this. And she left her profession. I think she was working in fashion at the time. I don't recall exactly, but she decided I was so moved by what the doctors did for me that I have to be part of doing the same. And she became a nurse working with the doctor who helped to save her life.
Wow.
She's just an amazing individual. This is why I want her to write a book. And I want people to know her and get to meet her in this doc.
Well, if people watch this episode, I think they'll be really encouraged by her attitude, her
Yeah.
outlook on life. It's a wonderful segment. Now, Anthony, having gone through this entire episode and all these visits with experts all over the place, what's the most important takeaway for you about bums?
Whew. I would say, apart from get checked and get comfortable talking about butts to go see your doctor, I would say that the bigger thing for me that this highlights and I really want to drive home for viewers is that science is the most powerful tool we have ever given ourselves. It has the power to dramatically improve any part of our lives that we want to improve because it's it's not a collection of facts, it's not the speed of light or the shape of a benzene molecule. It's not memorizing those facts. It is a process that we use to understand the world better, to make our lives better. And it's one that we know from this episode you can apply to anything, to any topic. So you can apply it to butt health, or you can apply it to, the range of butt, to understand the range of butts or our evolutionary history, whatever you want. Science is a tool that is yours to make use of.
Well, Anthony, it's a great episode. I think people are going to absolutely love it. It demystifies the butt in many, many ways. And if you don't mind me saying, your fresh and engaging manner is really wonderful to see. You made it an enjoyable program, and I can see that you're going to have a wonderful, wonderful stay at the Nature of Things. Congratulations.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. You mind if I use that as a testimonial? I'm going to put it up on my wall, or maybe send this to my mom. I really appreciate that. Those are kind words.
You're more than welcome. Anthony Morgan is the co-host of The Nature of Things. But seriously, the bottom line on bums premieres on CBC and CBC Gem streaming service, and that'll be Thursday night, January 18th, pardon me, at 9 p.m. It really is a marvelous show.